Jim, this was unlike any court appearance I've ever seen. The defendant talking over the judge, arguing with his own attorney, and making statements that were, frankly, hard to follow at times. And then he started talking about the shooting right there in court.
I be fighting things that y'all cannot see. So, therefore, how can you put someone in jail that's fighting something that you can't see?
20-year-old Tramonte Terrell Gibson interrupting the courtroom, making bizarre and at times disturbing statements as he faced a judge. He's accused of shooting 5 people, 1 killed, 4 others injured.
I shot every one of them people in the head. They're not making it back. My cousin, he was supposed to die. That dude that hit the floor, oh yeah, he died. A lot of people were shot in the head, sir. And went back up right in front of my face.
It's being recorded.
Okay, let me talk. Then if it's been recorded, then it's been recorded.
Still, Gibson, talking over his own attorney, was determined to be heard.
I don't care because I'm speaking the truth in my heart. I don't care about you saying my I don't care. I'm talking to that dude right there, the judge right there, I'm talking to him.
The courtroom was quiet at first. That is how these hearings usually begin. A defendant stands before the judge. The charges are read. The lawyers do their jobs. The judge asks a few questions. Then the case moves to the next date. But on this morning in Palm Beach County, the hearing did not stay routine. The man standing before the judge was 20 years old. His name was Tramonte Terrell Gibson. He had been brought into court after a violent chain of events at an apartment complex in Riviera Beach, Florida. A chain of events that left 2 men dead, several others hurt, and a community trying to understand how one evening turned into a nightmare. But when Gibson opened his mouth in court, the room got something no one expected. He said he was fighting something he could not see. He said he saw it at night. Then he said he could see it even while looking at the judge. And before the hearing was over, his words made people ask a chilling question. Was this a breakdown, or did he just say too much? Because before that courtroom moment, there was a phone call, a backpack, a young father, a mother who would soon be crying on camera, trying to explain that her son was not just another name in a shooting case. And a night at Azure Estates that started with tension and ended with people running for their lives. Before we go deeper, tell me where you are watching from. And as this story unfolds, I want you to decide for yourself. What disturbed you more, the crime itself, or what he said when he finally stood before the judge?
I shot every one of them people in their head. They not making it back. My cousin, he was supposed to die. That dude that hit the floor, oh yeah, he died. A lot of people were shot in the head, sir, and went back up right in front of my face. The people that were supposedly killed, they didn't die, nobody died, obviously, right?
Well, one person did. You do have 1 count.
Nah, nobody died, sir. How can you put someone in jail that's fighting something that you can't see? When I was on the highway driving, it's 3 cars. What's the devil's number? 6, right? It's 3 cars that pop up. 1, 2, 3. I shot every one of them people. Nah, shut up, man. Let me talk. I can't talk to the judge, bro. I'm talking what I can, what my heart need to tell whoever listening, bro. Okay, let me talk. Okay, I don't even need you, sir. I ain't gonna lie to you. I do not need you. Please, I don't need. Can you please tell me shut up, judge, please? I can't even talk. He's not even. Thank you, sir. I'm fighting something I can't even see. I see it at night. I see it now looking at you. I don't know how to fight it, sir. When I was in Stony Brook, sir, and I had that gun, that wasn't my gun, first off. I'm talking to that dude right there, the judge right there, I'm talking to him. I'm not worried about nothing what nobody's saying. I'm talking to him. I need to get this off my heart.
Mr. Gibson, we're going to be done for now.
Before people knew Tramonte Gibson's name, before the court clip began spreading, before the public heard about demons, spirits, and a courtroom outburst, there was John Richard Haliburton III. John was 25 years old. He was not an old man looking back a long life. He was still at the beginning of one. Later that same month, he would have turned 26. But the biggest thing happening in John's life was not his next birthday. It was his daughter. John had just become a father to a baby girl who was only 1 month old. 1 month. Still tiny. Still brand new to the world. Still at the stage where parents are learning her cries, her sleep, her face, her little movements. His mother, Curtisa Brown, said John was proud when he found out he was going to be a father. That detail matters because it shows where his mind was supposed to be. He was supposed to be stepping into responsibility. He was supposed to be building memories. He was supposed to be holding his daughter, watching her grow, and becoming the man she would one day know as Dad. But that future was cut off before it could even begin. Curtisa did not want the public to look at her son and see a stereotype. She did not want strangers to reduce him to the location where he died or the violence that surrounded his name. She wanted people to know he had a future. She wanted people to know he was loved. She wanted people to know he was not what careless people might assume from a headline. John was her son. And on March 16, 2026, he received a call that pulled him into the final moments of his life.
He was not a thug, and what happened to him was not right. My son had a job, and this is what happened to him.
It was Monday evening in Riviera Beach. The sun had not fully disappeared yet. The day was winding down. Around Azure Estates, people were moving through the normal rhythm of an apartment community. Some were outside. Some were coming and going. Some were near the area where a group had gathered. Nothing about the early evening told the people there that the next few minutes would become part of a criminal case. But Gibson was already at the complex. He had gone there to see his girlfriend, and at some point he ended up around a group of men outside. The tension was already there. He believed some of the men were harassing him. Whether that belief came from a real dispute, paranoia, fear, anger, or something deeper would become part of the questions surrounding the case. But in that moment, Gibson wanted something. He contacted John, and he asked him to bring a backpack. Inside that backpack was a firearm. That is the kind of detail that makes a family replay everything. Because John did not know he was walking toward the end. He did not know the call would become one of the most important moments in the timeline. He did not know that the person asking him for that backpack would soon be the same person standing before a judge saying things the courtroom would never forget. To John, maybe it was just a request. Maybe he thought he was helping someone he knew. Maybe he thought he could calm something down. Maybe he did not see the danger clearly enough until it was already too late. But once the backpack arrived, the situation changed. The weapon was no longer hidden in a bag. It was now in Gibson's hands. And the evening at Azure Estates started moving toward disaster. The first sign that things had gone too far was not a long argument. It was gunfire. People outside Azure Estates were suddenly thrown into panic. One moment, there was a group. The next, there was fear. People ran because they had to run. Others dropped down or tried to get away from the open space. In moments like that, no one is thinking clearly. No one is planning. Everyone is trying to survive the next few seconds. John was hit during the first part of the attack. So was Dillion Wright. Others were struck too. And what made the case even more frightening was that the violence did not stay locked inside one moment at the apartment complex. It kept moving. That is why this case shook people beyond John's family. This was not only a personal tragedy. It became a public danger. A violent episode that started at one location and then spread into the surrounding area. Inside Azure Estates, people were already dealing with the shock of what had happened. But Gibson did not stop there. He fled. And once he fled, the danger followed him. Outside the complex, the situation turned even more chaotic. Gibson moved away from the place where the first victims had been hit. But instead of the danger ending there, the case spilled into the road. He tried to take vehicles from people. More victims were pulled into the violence. People who may not have known anything about the earlier confrontation suddenly found themselves facing the same nightmare. That is what makes a chain of violence so terrifying. It does not stay neat. It does not stay in one place. It does not only touch the people who were there at the beginning. It expands. A driver becomes part of the story. A bystander becomes part of the story. Someone simply passing through becomes part of the story. By this point, Riviera Beach was no longer dealing with one scene. The city was dealing with a moving threat. John was already gone. Dillion Wright had been badly wounded and would later die. Other people were hurt. Gibson took a vehicle by force and tried to get away. That night did not only leave victims. It left witnesses. It left families. It left a community that suddenly knew how quickly ordinary life could collapse. The search did not last forever. A lookout went out. Then on I-95 in St. Lucie County, Florida Highway Patrol troopers stopped Gibson. That moment ended the immediate danger, but did not bring peace. Because once Gibson was taken back to Riviera Beach, the questions became even darker. Why did this happen? Why did he call John? Why did he believe he needed that firearm? Why did the violence keep spreading after the first victims were hit? And then came the part that would later make the courtroom even harder to watch. Gibson gave an explanation that sounded almost impossible to understand from the outside. He talked about demons. He talked about needing to get rid of them. He described something that made the case feel less like a simple dispute and more like a collision between violence, fear, and a disturbed state of mind. But the most painful part for the families was not only the explanation, it was the absence of remorse. Because when someone you love is gone, the least a family hopes for is that the person accused understands the weight of what happened. But this case did not give John's mother that comfort. It gave her something colder. Her son was dead. Her granddaughter had lost her father. And the man accused in the case was about to walk into court and speak in a way that would make the pain even harder to process. 2 days after the shooting, Gibson appeared in Palm Beach County Court. This should have been the moment where the story became more orderly. The streets had been chaotic. The apartment complex had been chaotic. The escape had been chaotic. But the courtroom was supposed to bring control. That did not happen. Gibson stood before the judge, and almost immediately, the hearing became difficult. He did not stay quiet. He interrupted. He spoke in a way that did not sound like a defendant carefully following his lawyer's advice. His attorney had a job to do, but Gibson kept pulling the attention back to himself. Then he said the words that made people freeze. He told the judge he was fighting something he could not see. He said he saw it at night. Then he said he saw it while looking at the judge. That one moment changed the entire feeling of the hearing. Because now the court was not simply looking at a 20-year-old accused in a violent case. It was looking at a defendant whose own words raised serious questions about what was happening inside his mind. But the hearing did not stop there. It became even more disturbing. At one point in the hearing, Gibson pushed back against the reality of the case. He said nobody died. Those words landed heavily because everyone connected to the case already knew that was not true. John was dead. His mother knew it. His family knew it. His baby girl had already lost him. And Dillion Wright's condition would soon add even more grief to the case. So when Gibson stood in court and spoke as if death had not happened, the moment became painful in a way that is hard to describe. Because death is final. For a family, there is no confusion about it. There is a before and after. Before the call, after the call. Before the funeral planning, after the funeral planning. Before the last time you saw someone, after you realize you will never see them again. So to hear the accused say nobody died was not just strange. It was a wound inside a wound. Even if his words came from confusion, mental instability, or disconnection, the family still had to hear them. And then, after denying the deaths, Gibson appeared to say even more about what happened. That is when the courtroom moved from strange to unforgettable. There is a reason defense attorneys tell clients not to speak in court, especially not at a first appearance. Because at that stage, the case is fresh. The facts are still forming. Charges can change. Evidence is still being reviewed. Every sentence can create problems later. A defendant may think he is explaining, but the court may hear an admission. A defendant may think he is correcting someone, but the prosecutor may hear a contradiction. A defendant may think he is defending himself, but his lawyer may hear damage. That is what made Gibson's first appearance feel like a slow-motion disaster. He was not speaking through a prepared statement. He was not entering a plea. He was not calmly answering basic questions. He was speaking out in open court in front of a judge while facing a case that already involved death, injuries, and alleged carjacking. And the more he talked, the more the hearing seemed to slip away from the clean legal path it was supposed to follow. For the judge, the priority was control. For the attorney, the priority was protection. For the families, the priority was justice. For Gibson, in that moment, the priority seemed to be saying whatever was moving through his mind. That is what made the courtroom so tense. Everyone in the room had a different reason to want him to stop. But he kept going. At first, Gibson was facing charges tied to one confirmed death and multiple injuries. Then Dillion Wright died. That changed everything. Now the case involved 2 deaths. John Richard Haliburton, 3. Dillion Wright. 2 families. 2 sets of grief. 2 names the court would have to carry forward. The legal case grew heavier after that. A grand jury later indicted Gibson on multiple charges, including 2 counts of first-degree murder with a firearm, 3 counts of attempted first-degree murder with a firearm, and carjacking with a firearm. That indictment did not mean a conviction. It did not mean the case was finished, but it showed how serious the case had become. The state was no longer dealing with 1 death and several wounded victims from a single location. It was dealing with a full chain of violence. The apartment complex, the attempted carjackings, the forced vehicle, the injured victims, the second death, and the first court appearance where the accused had already made statements the public would not forget. And still, the case was only beginning. Later, prosecutors made another major decision. They chose not to seek the death penalty. That does not make the case light. It does not make the charges less serious. It does not erase the pain of the families. But it does change the path of the case. Death penalty cases move differently. They can take longer. They require a different legal structure. They carry a different emotional burden for everyone involved. By not seeking death, the state kept the case serious but moved it away from a capital punishment track. That means the central legal question becomes what happens if Gibson is convicted. Will the court focus only on punishment? Will mental health questions become part of the defense? Will his statements in court become part of the case? Will the families feel that justice has been done? Those questions remain open. And that is important, because there is no confirmed final sentence here. Being held without bond is not the same as being sentenced to life without parole. Held without bond means a defendant remains in custody while the case moves forward. Life without parole would come only after conviction and sentencing. That difference matters. This story is already serious enough without adding an ending that has not been confirmed. When people first hear about this case, they may focus on Gibson's words in court. That is understandable. The courtroom moment is shocking. But the deeper story is what those words sat on top of. A young father was killed. His mother had to speak publicly through grief. A 1-month-old baby girl lost the chance to grow up with her father. Dillion Wright lost his life after the same chain of violence. Other victims were hurt. People outside the original conflict were pulled into danger. And a community was left trying to understand how an ordinary Monday evening turned into something so terrifying. The courtroom did not create the tragedy. It exposed how complicated the aftermath would be. Because now the court has to deal with the violence itself, the victims, the families, the defendant's words, the mental health questions, the public safety concerns, and the legal process still ahead. That is a lot for one case, and is why this hearing left such a mark. Not because it gave people a clean answer, because it gave them more questions. The story began with a call to bring a backpack. It moved to a group outside Azure Estates, then to gunfire, then to people running, then to attempted carjackings, then to an arrest on I-95, then to a grieving mother trying to remind the world who her son was. And finally, it moved into a courtroom where the accused man stood before a judge and said things no one expected. That is why this case is so disturbing. Not only because of what happened outside the apartment complex, but because when the case reached court, the chaos did not disappear. It followed him inside. And now the justice system has to do what courts are supposed to do. Separate fear from fact, mental state from responsibility, allegations from proof, and grief from the slow process of law. But no matter how long the case takes, some things cannot be undone. John's daughter will still grow up without him. Curtisa Brown will still carry the memory of her son. Dillion Wright's family will still carry their loss. The survivors will still remember that evening. And everyone who watched that first appearance will remember the moment Gibson stood in court and spoke like the case was not already painful enough. Now I want to hear from you. What part of this case hit you the hardest? Was it John's mother speaking about her son? Was it the 1-month-old baby girl left behind? Was it the violence spreading beyond Azure Estates? Or was it what Gibson said in court? Drop your thoughts below. And if you want more true crime stories where the courtroom becomes the place where the case takes a disturbing turn, subscribe to Crime Scene Exposed. Because sometimes the most shocking part of a case is not only what happens at the scene, is what the accused says when he finally stands before the judge.